بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. Bismillah. So we were looking at tafsir within the study of the Ulum al-Quran, Tafsir al-Quran, and you were asked to make some notes for some of the pages. Yes, Abdullah? Yeah. Very good. So you've done that, yeah? MashaAllah. Okay. What does this word tafsir mean? Tafsir.
The explanation.
Explanation.
To open.
To open. Anything else?
To reveal.
To reveal. Good. The meaning. We looked at quite a lengthy definition of tafsir al-Quran, didn't we? You remember that? Anyway, that's fine. We don't want to, because that's quite lengthy. The one we gave in Arabic last time. Tafsir, I don't think we mentioned the definition of tafsir, the simple one, which is the meaning of a verse or an ayah as Allah intended. Tafsir means the meaning of the Quran as Allah intended it to mean. The meaning of an ayah as Allah intended it, and how Allah intends its meaning. What does He mean by this? You know, when you say that, oh, what do you mean by that? So therefore, then the person, what happens in that situation? Let's think of an example of a statement that would require this question to be posed. That, what do you mean by that? Any general statement that you can think of. I'll give you an example. A statement. No, you can't steal my statement. I'll give you a statement which is relevant to all three of you. Yeah. So, are you ready to be married? This is a question, yeah? If I asked you, are you ready to be married? What would you ask me possibly? What do you mean by that? Yes. What do you mean by ready? Yeah? Are you ready to be married? Are you ready? What does it mean ready? What can it mean ready? What can it mean?
Mentally, physically.
Mentally, physically, financially, spiritually. Anything else? Anyway, so what do I mean by it? You see, maybe I mean that, are you mature enough, let's say? Maybe are you financially stable enough? I may mean that, are you ready means, do you know your role and responsibility if you get married? The implications of that role and responsibility. So the point I'm making here is the natiq. The natiq means the one who spoke, the one who speaks, knows what he means, isn't it? Yes? So we have looked at the section previously in the Ulum al-Quran that Al-Quran is Kalamullah. It is the speech of Allah. So therefore, if it is the speech of Allah, then He knows what He means, isn't it? So the Quran, the tafsir of Quran means then we want to know what does Allah mean by what He says. Is it clear? Simple? So this is very simply what tafsir means. There is a misunderstanding, and maybe I mentioned it before. What did I mention?
That's okay.
Yeah, that some people think, so there are a few misconceptions. Misconception one is people think that tafsir means you have to go into a lot of detail. Yeah. Other misconception is tafsir is very complicated. Other misconception is tafsir is different people's views, so on and so forth. And all these misconceptions, what do they stem from, you think, in your opinion?
One's ignorance to not actually go ahead and just, like learn the.
Exactly, mashallah. This is the root of it. It is the ignorance of not knowing anything about the Quran really, and not having really read it to understand it ever. So this becomes a big barrier between the person and the Quran. These preconceived ideas or notions that usually are from shaitan to keep a person away from even thinking about understanding the Quran, let alone making an effort to understand it. So I spoke to some people and I said the best thing is for you to read the Quran with meaning. And the first response I had from them was, but there's so many interpretations. You see, misconception. Yeah, there's so many interpretations. So how do we understand it? So how do you respond to this statement that how can I read the Quran with meaning when there are so many interpretations? How will I know whether it's right or wrong? So how you would explain this to somebody now? You, mashallah, students of Al-Quran and Ulum al-Quran. For now, how many months, mashallah? 6 months, I mean. Alhamdulillah. This is a blessing. You know, the consistency in learning and the knowledge is a blessing. This is a blessing. The scholars say that the consistency of a good act is an indication of its acceptance by Allah. I mean, that Allah accepts it. That the people, they made effort, so Allah gave them tawfiq to continue with this effort. And this is the best knowledge, ilm al-Quran, best knowledge. خيركم من تعلم القرآن وعلمه. The best people, the Prophet ﷺ said, the people who learn the Quran teach the Quran. So how you would respond to this now that there's so many interpretations? What do you think you should say to these people to help them? Our role is to help people, not to bash them, knock them out. Abdullah? If you start,
what's the question again? Like how would you go about helping them or responding?
So yeah, you're in conversation, and you say to me, you know what, you should read the Quran with meaning, and I say no, I say, but there's so many interpretations. What do I do? How will I know? It's confusing.
You will give them a practical tip, but just saying that if there's there's a like the most known tafsir, you could be like, okay, you could start from this, and then you can explain to them how different tafsir has like different approaches, different how to say it, but it's like they have their own styles, isn't it? So to explain that side to them, and then maybe say that as a beginning student of the Quran or whatnot, you could start from this. Once you master that, you'll go to the next one.
Good, yeah. So that's a very good practical tip to help the person, give them a practical roadmap. You start here. Yeah. What else would you suggest? Maybe think. So he's taken that suggestion now. You can't give that. Yeah?
I think you just say that the Quran is simple and give that explanation that you gave. That the meaning of that tafsir is just the meaning that Allah intended. So
good.
there is just one.
So to clarify
Yeah.
that, what is tafsir, isn't it? Because the underlying issue is this misconception that tafsir is this, when actually it's not that. Anything else, Abdullah? Did you think about it? Okay, good. One other very fundamental aspect of this is that the Quran is the speech of Allah. Yeah? What is the objective of any speech? When you speak, why we speak? What's the objective of speaking?
To convey an idea or
Convey an idea.
argument.
Yes? So, what limits the clarity and the articulation of the speaker? Meaning, what limits the person's ability to speak clearly?
His limited knowledge in the thing that he's speaking in.
His limited knowledge, what else? Because sometimes you know something,
Man of practice.
maybe. You know, many times you ask, on my experience as a teacher, I say that, tell me a question, I ask a question, and student says something in response. And I say, that's not good enough. And then I explain it. And then the student says, that's what I meant. Yeah? So what is the limiting factor of the student in this scenario?
Maybe they didn't think about it enough.
Okay, but they thought about it and it's clear here. Where is the impediment? Where's the bottleneck?
To know how to communicate.
Very good. It's the ability to communicate it clearly, articulate it, so that the person will be able to understand what you say and what you mean. Are you following this here? Quran is speech of Allah. Allah, He is perfect. So His speech, nothing can be clearer than His speech. Nothing can be easier to understand than His speech. Is this making sense? When Allah is perfect, His kalam is perfect, His clarity is perfect, then to think even this, that it can be misunderstood, is confusing, is absolutely wrong, isn't it? It goes against your fundamental belief that Allah is perfect. Simple, isn't it? Not complicated at all. But the people don't think, or they haven't been given this clarity. So,
You know examples of that, like
yeah.
it kind of, you know how he starts from Allah as being perfect, but it kind of leads to, if you say that it's not clear, you're basically going against the idea that Allah is perfect, or stuff like for example, Allah is the most merciful, but then you give up hope. Does all of that relate? Like, is that why is that? Is that a sign of minor shirk or something?
This, no, we shouldn't say that yet. We should say this is the lack of the appreciation of who is Allah, and the lack of appreciation of what it is that you don't understand. So it's our limitation. Yeah, we are limited. So in order to help us in our limitations, Allah Ta'ala, He has given us the Quran. And this Quran, as we will mention now, we started last time, the first step of understanding Quran is through the Quran. Yes, because when we say, what do you mean by this? Then Allah will tell us what He meant by it in another place in His speech. Does that make sense? You get it? So a person gives a long speech, an address, inaugural address, like the president will give or presidents give. And they may speak for 20, 30, 40 minutes. And then the analysts, the analysts, they will then comment on it. And they will say, he started by saying this, but later on he specified what he meant by that in his speech. Yeah, or he alluded to that. But then later on he said that to clarify or to expand. So Al-Quran explains other parts of the Quran. This is the most fundamental and first step of us understanding Quran. Al-Quran yufassiru ba'duhu ba'da. Quran explains Quran. A part of the Quran explains another part of the Quran. And this is how we understand what Allah meant by this. This makes sense? So if I have any question about anything in the Quran, what's our first line of action?
Go to the Quran itself.
Look at that specific subject matter or topic or word and look at how else and what else has been used regarding that in the whole Quran. And you will find that you will be satisfied, clear, after you've done that. Yeah? The problem arises when you take one thing and you don't look at it in the context of the whole Quran. Then you misunderstand it. So did we look at some examples of this last time?
There was a few, like the ayah of Ihdina Siratal Mustaqim. What is that itself?
MashaAllah, very good. Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. So yes, so one example of Quran explaining the Quran itself is, as you said, Ihdina Siratal Mustaqim. And what was the follow-up from that, Abdullah?
That the Quran is a guidance.
So the whole Quran explains that, but the other was An'amta alayhim. Sirat.
Nisa, Ma'idah.
Speak. You have to articulate, otherwise we will guess what you're meaning.
So An'amta alayhim is
Yeah.
free.
Listen to me. If you don't articulate, you will have problems with your marriage. Huh? She will say, you don't speak to me, you don't tell me what you're thinking, what you're feeling, headache. Huh? Learn to speak clearly, full sentences. Okay? So Allah was articulating his
So
thoughts.
An'amta alayhim, the ones who Allah has favored, refers to is elaborated in Surah Nisa, Ma'idah.
Which ayah?
فأولئك مع الله. So Surah Nisa,
Mm.
ayah 62.
Okay, let's see. Here we go. So Surah Al-Fatiha says, Sirat al-Ladina an'amta alayhim. Allah Ta'ala says, He teaches us, ask me to guide you to the path of those who I favored. Yes? So the question is now, who are the people who are favored? What does Allah mean by people who are favored? Yes, question, yeah? So another part of the Quran explains who are the people Allah favors in this ayah. The people who obey Allah and the Messenger, they are from the people or with the people who Allah has favored. Allah has bestowed His favors upon them. And who are they? The prophets, the Siddiqeen, the martyrs, the righteous. But these are the people who obey Allah and the Messenger. Okay. So this is one example of Quran explains the Quran. Another example, do you remember anything else we mentioned last time? No? We mentioned the dua, not dua. We mentioned the statement of Adam alayhi salam when he and Hawa made the mistake. And then Allah Ta'ala, He teaches them kalimat, words. Fataba alayhi, and then Allah, He forgave them. So what were the words? The words have been given in another part of the Quran. In A'raf, very good. A'raf 23, where Allah Ta'ala, He taught Adam alayhi salam the words to use to seek Allah's forgiveness. This is the dua Allah taught Adam and Hawa, both of them. Rabbana zalamna anfusana. Oh our Lord, we have wronged ourselves. Wa illam taghfir lana wa tarhamna. If you do not show us forgiveness and mercy, lanakunanna min al-khasirin, then we would definitely be from the losers. So this ayah explains the other ayah where Allah told us, He taught him the kalimat. What did He teach him? This ayah tells us what He taught Adam alayhi salam. To teach us how to respond to Allah if we make a mistake. Okay. Another one is it's the waste of money, absolute waste of money. This nuisance, pollution. Okay, we are going to look at 3 aspects of Quran, explaining Quran. Yeah? This is the first aspect we are looking at. The first aspect deals with one thing in one place is elaborated by another place to give it full meaning. So one is the ayah, Inna shirka la zulmun azim. But the other ayah that this explains is where? This is now you have to tell me. The people who do not do, who believe but without dhulm.
الذين آمنوا ولم يلبسوا إيمانهم بظلم.
Where is it? An'am. Very good. And where roughly?
Just before the 8th juz.
Acha, mashallah, very good.
The fourth page before the
Mashallah, mashallah. Hayyakallah. Hayyakallah, mashallah.
after that.
Mhm.
The first
Second. Yeah, after this page.
Jazakallah khair.
Should I pass it?
Yeah.
There's
Niche?
after. Oh no, sorry, before. It's
Okay.
before.
Okay.
Just one more. There it is.
Jazakallah khair. This is the ayah 82 of Surah Al-An'am. Surah Al-An'am 82. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. الذين آمنوا, the people who believe, وَلَمْ يَلْبِسُوا إِيمَانَهُمْ بِظُلْمٍ, and those who do not mix their belief with the injustice. We understand this, yeah? People who believe and they do not mix this belief with injustice. أُولَٰئِكَ لَهُمُ الْأَمْنُ وَهُمْ مُهْتَدُونَ, they will have the peace and they would be guided. So the Sahaba were worried about this ayah, because this ayah is saying the people who believe and then they don't do any type of injustice. The Sahaba said, we are human, we make mistakes. Sometimes we make a mistake and it's injustice. So this means that we are not going to be able to be given security and guidance. We will be deprived of security and guidance, which means we are going to be misguided and punished. It didn't make sense? Yeah, clear? So the key word here to understand is zulm. Zulm, injustice. What does Allah mean here by zulm? Does He mean that you took 1 penny from somebody, so therefore they are destroyed now. There's zulm, isn't it? But it's 1 penny. Or you didn't give somebody enough attention, this is injustice for him. So what does it mean here? Zulm. Yeah. So Quran will explain what the zulm mean. Allah will explain himself in the Quran, in speech. What do I mean by zulm? So for that, we go to Surah Luqman. Surah Luqman, and we go to the beautiful section of the advice that Luqman gives to his son. And he says to him in this ayah number 13, وَإِذْ قَالَ لُقْمَانُ لِابْنِهِ. And recall when Luqman was speaking to his son, he said to him, وَهُوَ يَعِظُهُ. And this was an admonition, an advice to his son. يَا بُنَيَّ. Oh my dear son, لَا تُشْرِكْ بِاللَّهِ. Do not associate any partners with Allah in any of his rights. إِنَّ الشِّرْكَ. Because this association with Allah in any of his rights, لَظُلْمٌ عَظِيمٌ, is in fact the greatest of injustices. So now we know what dhulm means. Dhulm means shirk. Dhulm means وَضَعُ الشَّيْء مِنْ غَيْرِ مُحَلِّهِ, to put something in other than its rightful place, which is to not give Allah his right. Either you bring Allah down to the creation level or you take creation up to Allah's level. So these two ayat we understand together. Clear? Any other example you can think of in Quran? They worried the Sahaba. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن أنتم إلا وأنتم مسلمون. What does it mean? You said it in the khutbah.
Always say the word direct to truth.
No, you have skipped. You've gone forward. You mashallah, you are the, what they call them, GNT student, gifted and talented. They go beyond the teacher, mashallah. Ya ayyuhal ladina amanu ittaqullaha haqqa tuqatih. Abdullah.
Fear Allah as is his right to be feared.
Very good. Fear Allah, oh you who believe, fear Allah, have taqwa of Allah as much as is Allah's right. Yeah? Haqqa tuqatihi. Sahaba were shocked. We cannot give Allah his right. How will give Allah his right? We're human. You understand this? So which ayah came to explain this? Abdullah?
وما قدر الله حق قدره
Hmm?
وما قدر الله حق قدره.
How does that explain it? Okay.
Oh, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها.
That's very beautiful. That's one. Very good. That Allah does not bear a burden on anybody more than it can bear. Very good. That's one. One more explicit. Similar wording as well. Ittaqullah haqqa tuqatihi. Yeah, we said. Another place Allah Ta'ala mentions ittaqullaha or fattaqullaha mastata'tum. Fattaqullaha, they should fear Allah. Look at this freedom to disturb us. Fattaqullaha mastata'tum. Abdullah, where is it? 28 Juz? 27 Juz?
No.
Isn't it?
الله استطعتم من اسمعوا اتقوا الله قرضا حسنا.
Hadith?
عديد.
Hadith. So we go to Hadith, yeah? Are you following me? Tell me if you're not, because I need you to follow and know this, inshallah. So in Hadid, the first ayah, let's take the first ayah. It is in Surah. Where is this? يا الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. واعتصموا آل عمران, isn't it? Al Imran middle, isn't it? Here we are. Al Imran, ayah 102. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. O you who have believed, fear Allah as He should be feared, and do not die except as Muslims. Yes? So now to understand what does it mean to fear Allah as much as is His right, we go to Surah Al-Hadid 54 and we look at, 57, sorry. And we see the ayah. I've skipped it. Here we are. Oh, this is right. Check. I think it's Tahrim or is it Taghabun? Tahrim or Taghabun maybe, I think Tahrim or Taghabun. Taghabun, I said 28.
Last
Just 28. Abdullah, listen to me. Okay. Yeah, 16. Taghabun 16. فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ. So fear Allah as much as you are able. Istita'a is your ability. And this is lovely that Adam mentioned that. I didn't think of that. But when you think, of course, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Allah does not burden a soul more than it can bear. So everything is relative to your ability. Your taqwa is relevant to your ability. Nobody can give Allah His due right of taqwa. Nobody. Even the Prophet ﷺ, he said, I cannot give you the right. I cannot praise you as you deserve to be praised. He said in the hadith. And on the Day of Judgment, the Prophet ﷺ, he will be given the flag of hamd. And he said that I would then praise Allah like I have never praised Him before because I don't know how to praise Him. But He will teach me how to praise Him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, on the Day of Judgment. He will be given the flag of hamd of Allah. So this is another example of Al-Quran. يُفَسِّرُ بَعْضُهُ بَعْضَهُ. A part of the Quran explains another part of the Quran. So you must be, so I have a high expectation. You must be regular readers of Quran. Must. You must be well versed with Quran. Again and again and again. So your cycle in life is you are always in the study of Quran. Every day you spend time to read or study. So the levels of understanding Quran, the levels of interaction with Quran. This macro level that you read this much in every day. And then in a specific period you will finish Quran. That's one level, macro level. Micro level is you are then focusing on a surah for many weeks. Or you're having a dars, you are focusing on some ayat. But they're all in parallel, yeah, these things happening. So you are finishing a dawrah of the Quran, reading it just with meaning, and you are trying to finish, which is a longer term goal, to understand the whole Quran but in depth. So but they keep overlapping, like you get the eclipse. Yeah? You keep getting that overlap. And then slowly, you should give yourself 23 years at least. Yeah. So then inshallah you would have gone through Quran as Allah Ta'ala, He wants us to go steadily. If you start to read Quran at the age of 17 with meaning at least, the latest, then by the time you're 40, you are ready for the life. Huh? Otherwise,
Surah Qaf. That dua is Surah Qaf.
what is it?
When the person reaches an age
Beautiful, yeah.
of
Arba'ina sana, 40 years. So you should have this ambition, inshallah. Yeah? So, khair, we move on to the second aspect of Quran, explaining another part of the Quran. This aspect is the aspect of qira'at. So one was, we mentioned the Quran, one word or term in the Quran explained in another word or term to explain the meaning. The next is that the qira'at. You remember we mentioned qira'at. What else did we study with the qira'at? Another term we used. Abdullah, ahruf. Sab'ata ahruf. 7 ahruf. And then there are how many qira'at? 2 qira'at.
Oh, 7.
7. What do you think? What do you say?
What is it? 7?
10?
I think it's 10 authentic. Like, probably.
10 authentic ones that we trace back to the Prophet. And why the 7 qira'at became very popular and not the 10? We studied it. Because of the scholar that when he compiled his book about the qira'at, he compiled just 7 of them instead of 10 of them, because he wanted it to flow with the 7 ahruf, and then the people misunderstood and mistook that there are only 7 qira'at. So today, when you talk about qira'at, people say sab'a qira'at, that's it. Yeah? So the qira'at, the different readings. So the most famous example is what of the different readings of the same word.
Surah Yusuf. وغلقت الأبواب وقالت هيت لك وهئت لك.
Okay.
Something like that.
That's okay. But the most easy, and everybody knows, Malik and Malik. Malik, yeah? In Malik Yawmiddin. So Malik is the owner, Malik, king. 2 qira'at, yeah? How do these let us understand what Allah means by Malik Yawmiddin?
He's also the king.
Because it gives you now the dimensions of his milkiyah, his sovereignty. He's not just a king. You can have King of England or Queen of England, but she doesn't own you. Technically, legally, she does. You know, in this country, this house belongs to the Queen. You should know that. Did you know that? You should know this. Technically, everything you own is hers by Her Majesty's. What is it called? You read on the cornflakes box. It's mentioned there. Cornflakes. By appointment. What is it? Something like this.
Her Majesty's revenue and customs.
He's thinking of his tax return. I think it says by appointment to Her Majesty or something like that. You'll be surprised. They talk about freedom and liberty, all rubbish. All a big fast to people, to keep people sleeping. in the slavery. So qira'at, they give you the meaning to give you the full meaning. So we're going to look at an example now. There can be many, one of them very famous in Surah Al-Ahzab. Abdullah, what's the time?
6:20.
When did we start? 45. Okay, we have time. Ahzab. We go to ayah number 33. Oh no, sorry. The ayah is where am I? Sorry. Ma'idah 6. I have to go to Ma'idah number 6. We'll come back to An'am. Ma'idah, sorry. We'll come back to Ahzab. Ma'idah ayah number 6. So let me put the translation there. But it's so long, it's such a big ayah that you can't see the translation at the same time. Yeah. So, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, oh you who believe. Idha qumtum ila salat, when you stand for your prayer, faghsilu, wash, ghusl, wujuhakum, your faces, wa aydiyakum, and your hands, ila al-marafiq, up to the elbows, wamsahu, and do masha. What is masha? What is masha? Wipe. Masha, when you do the masha, yeah? Like this. Yeah. You don't wash the whole head, did you? Yeah. Difference to washing the hands fully, and this is just wiping, isn't it? Yeah. So wamsahu bi ru'usikum, your heads, wa arjulakum, and your feet, ilal ka'bayn, up to and including your ankles. So now the word here, arjulakum, there are two qira'at for this. One is arjulakum, arjulakum, arjulakum. The thing we have to emphasize here is this, arjulakum. And the other word, the other qiraat is what is the other one? Arjulikum. Arjulikum. The difference is the difference of the fatha here or the kasra here. Arjula, a or e. Yeah? Arjulakum, arjulikum. So if you say arjulakum, it means wipe over your feet. Oh, arjulakum means wash your feet. Faghsilu wujuhakum, because this is what is called mansub. You studied that yet?
Yeah.
Nasab, mansub. You inshallah will study. We'll study together inshallah. Bismillah. Make intention. Do you intend to do the Arabic? You should intend it. Say, Allah, I intend to learn the language of Quran. Even if it takes me 50 years, there's no rush. Yeah? The main thing is we go on to the train. That's it. So arjulakum is mansub, which means it is the thing that is washed. Okay, to put it simply. The indication here is that wash. When you say arjulikum, this is from the ala. Ala means on top of, meaning wipe on top of. Ala in Arabic, it gives this to the the noun, it makes it arjuli. Don't worry to understand it too much because the grammar. When we study, you will find inshallah easy. So if you say arjulakum, it means wash the feet. If you say arjulikum, it means wipe over the feet in Arabic. Yeah. So now the Shia, they use this qira'at, the qira'at which says arjulikum. So they wipe the feet, they don't wash the feet. But they have dalil, they have proof from Quran. But we use the evidence, and there are other ahadiths to explain now how the Prophet ﷺ, he did wudu. So therefore we follow this, that arjulakum, wash the feet. We say we follow the qirat of arjulakum, and arjulikum we will follow. So Quran. So this goes into the next aspect, or the next stage of understanding Quran is through the hadith and the practice of the Prophet ﷺ. When did he wipe his feet? When he wore the socks. Yeah, is it clear? So we understand this, that arjulakum means that when you are washing without socks, you wash the feet. You don't wipe the feet without socks. But when you have socks, because the Prophet ﷺ, when he had the socks, he wiped over it. So we now have the evidence for washing and for wiping, when to wash, when to wipe. So you don't wash with the socks on. You get it? You wipe with the socks on, you can, and you wash when you don't have socks on. So we take it from this because the qira'at, the different qira'at, they explained the meaning. And then the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ further elaborated, and then the understanding of the Sahaba clarified in case we had any doubt. So this is one aspect of the second aspect of the Quran explaining itself, the qira'at. They help to explain the meaning of what Allah intends by this word. Happy? Any question? Anything to add? Anything? Other example you can think of? Okay. Third aspect of Quran explaining the Quran is that you have to look at the whole context of the ayah under discussion to understand the real meaning of the ayah or a part of the ayah. So in the ayah, if there is a word or there is a what is called murakkab, there is a collection of words or a sentence, jumla we call it, sentence, then what does the word or what does the two words together, or what does the sentence actually mean? You look in the context, you look at the context of what is being said before and after. And you go as far as is needed for you to see that this ayah is related to this many ayah before and this many afterwards, because this is all covering the same topic. Does it make sense? Yeah? So the examples that they give in the book by Taqi Usmani, may Allah Ta'ala preserve him, is the ayah in Surah Al-Ahzab. Surah Al-Ahzab. We are reading Surah Al-Ahzab, and outside there is Azab. May I protect us from this Azab. Allah understand.
Today?
They banned fireworks in India. No, they didn't. Why? Because it's too much pollution.
Okay. see this. This Surah, Ya Allah. Surah Al-Ahzab, and the ayah is 28, the section 28 to okay, up to, I would say, 36. Where did we start?
28.
28. So from 28 to, what did I say, 31? 36. This is one section that is looking at a specific subject matter. And the problem is that what people do is instead of seeing the whole this whole section together, they take one aspect. They would take one aspect, yeah, of this ayah. وَقَرْنَا فِي بُيُوتِكُنَّ وَتَبَرَّجْ وَلَا تَبَرَّجْنَ تَبَرَّجُ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ الْأُولَى. And abide in your houses and do not display yourselves as was the display of the former times of ignorance. And the people say that this is only for the wives of the Prophet ﷺ. This is not for the other women, Muslims. So the Mufassirin, they are saying, and the books are saying, no, you should look at this whole section to appreciate who is being addressed here. I'm not going to go through it, but I'm just giving you you have to read it yourself. Yeah? Read the whole section to see what is happening here. And then it would be clear that this is addressing the believing women. You see this, in fact, you have to look at the surah really, to really grasp it. That this surah Ahzab is telling the believers that you are true believers if you follow and obey Allah and His Messenger, especially His Messenger. This surah emphasizes the right of Prophet so much, 6 times, 6 aspects. And if you don't do that, you are liable to become munafiq. Because this will happen in the Ahzab, the battle of the Khandaq, the trench. You know the battle of the trench? Have you watched The Message? You watched The Message recently?
A long time ago.
You should watch it again. Watch it again. It will aid to understand.
Produced by Shias.
So,
Oh yeah, we know that.
Oh.
So that's why we look at the whole thing, not just the label. Yeah. But we should good to know that. So Surah Al-Ahzab is telling you who is true believer from the munafiq. And then the believing men have been mentioned, addressed, and the believing women have been mentioned and addressed. And they have been told, this is your lifestyle, O believing men, this is your lifestyle, O believing women. The lifestyle of the believing men is you go out and you will fight against oppression, like you did in Ahzab. And the women, your initial and your primary responsibility is the household. And all the laws and all the guidance has been given in this surah. So when you look at that holistically, and the Prophet ﷺ in this surah, he mentions fi Rasulillahi uswatun hasana. The best example for you is the Prophet ﷺ. But for the women, the Prophet ﷺ cannot be the complete example because he's a man. You understand? There are aspects of a life in a woman that only a woman can be a role model for her. So the role models for the believing women are the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, wa ummahatuhum, in this surah. So it is not very sensible to say this only applies to the women of the Prophet. So you have to read the whole context of the section at least, but then to know the surah, and then of course the Sunnah of the Prophet, the understanding of the companions, etc., etc. So this is another example of this is an example of the context. It explains what is meant by this. And then he mentions a book by Sheikh Muhammad Amin bin Mukhtar bin Muhammad Mukhtar al-Shanqiti. Shanqiti, very famous scholar. And Sheikh Saib Hassan, I'm not sure if he studied with him or not. I'm not sure. But he mentions him and he refers to his tafsir of Shanqiti. So he has written a book, Adwa'ul Bayan fi Idah al-Quran bil-Quran. Adwa'ul Bayan, that which illuminates, the statements that illuminate regarding the explanation of the Quran explaining the Quran. So I want to get that book now, inshallah, because that is a very detailed study and book on the Quran explaining the Quran. The different aspects. We've looked at 3 aspects, isn't it? But that book would go into detail. It's called Adwa'ul Bayan. Adwa'ul Bayan fi Idah al-Quran bil-Quran. Shanqiti, Sheikh Shanqiti, rahimahullah. Okay. So where are we? So the next thing is, how do we know how long we have been on this recording? Does it say somewhere? No.
55 minutes.
45?
55.
50. So we have 5 minutes. The next stage of tafsir is to understand the Quran through the hadith or ahadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ahadith, I should write. The ahadith are the sayings, the actions, and the tacit confirmation by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam other than the Quran. The sayings, actions, and tacit approval of the Prophet ﷺ other than Al-Quran, Hadith. So let us just start by looking at where is the proof that we should take the Quran and its meaning beyond what the Quran says about itself and go to the Prophet ﷺ to understand what it says. Yes? Be clear? So we go to Surah An-Nahl. You have to understand one other thing, very important here. You have to look at Surah Al-Hijr and Nahl together. Hijr and Nahl. Surah Al-Hijr mentions in ayah 9, very famous ayah, Inna nahnu nazzalna dhikra wa inna lahu lahafidun. Indeed, we have revealed this Quran and we will be its guardian. So we have looked at the Ijazul Quran in detail and we have looked at the aspect of the preservation of the Quran. Yeah? So this is the statement where Allah is saying we will guard it, we will preserve it. So now, one aspect of its preservation is given in the following surah. In ayah 44. Because the obvious meaning of Allah preserving the Quran is that He will preserve its text, isn't it? In the text, the Arabic text. But He also will preserve the meaning of it when we look at this ayah. So we take وَبِالْبَيِّنَاتِ وَالزُّبُرِ. This is ayah 44. وَأَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكَ الذِّكْرَ. And we revealed to you the dhikr, the reminder, which is the Quran. Why? لِتُبَيِّنَ. Li means to. Tubayyina, so that you will explain, make clear, clarify, linnas, to people, ma nuzzila ilayhim, what we have sent for them and to them. وَلَعَلَّهُمْ, so that they would يَتَفَكَّرُونَ, they would use their intellect and ability and understanding to understand your explanation, your clarification, to know what Allah Ta'ala He has revealed. So here you find Allah Ta'ala, He has given the role and responsibility to the Prophet ﷺ of tabiyin. Tabiyin, bayan means clear, unambiguous explanation. You can say the actualization of the Quran, as Aisha said, radiallahu anha, when she was asked by the Prophet ﷺ, she said, "Kana khuluquhu al-Quran." The Prophet ﷺ's whole life and every aspect of his whole life was the explanation of Quran in action. So we have, this is one place in the Quran where Allah Ta'ala is telling us explicitly that the Quran will be explained by the Prophet ﷺ because he has been given this job. Is it clear? And one other place, Abdullah, where is it? You should know. I mentioned many times before. In that.
ولقد يسأل القرآن للذكر فهل من مدكر.
No, where it says this, what we're talking about,
يا أيها الرسول بلغ ما أنزل إليك من ربك وإن لم تفعل
baligh is not to explain, it is to convey.
فإنما عليك البلاغ.
Carry on thinking. Good.
Is it not Surah Qamar?
What is it? So Allah Ta'ala has said in that He has made this Quran very easy for people to be reminded. So who would like to be reminded? Yes. But we are saying explicitly where Allah has said, we will protect and guard it and we will explain and then you will convey our explanation.
يا أيها الذين لا don't worry.
I don't know, you tell me.
The one that
Tell me. Which okay. Surah Al-Qiyamah. Allah Ta'ala, He says in this, regarding its preservation first, لا تحرك به لسانك لتعجل به. To the Prophet ﷺ, Allah Ta'ala says, don't hasten and move your tongue in haste, yeah, in order for you to memorize the Quran. Don't do that. Inna alayna jam'ahu wa Qur'ana. It is for us, jam'ahu, to collect it in your memory and in your heart. Wa Qur'anahu, and its recitation and its reading. That's for us. You don't have to make the effort. Like we have to make effort to memorize the surah. Prophet ﷺ being told, you do not need to make that effort. It is Allah's job. He will do it. فَإِذَا قَرَأْنَاهُ, but when we have recited it to you through Jibreel, you follow that recitation. Then ثُمَّ إِنَّ عَلَيْنَا بَيَانَهُ, and then it is also not only the recitation, meaning the text, its explanation and clarification is also our job. Allah Ta'ala is saying to the Prophet ﷺ. Is it clear? So when you look at this now with the other ayah, لِتُبَيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ, what was it? لِتُبَيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ. Allah Ta'ala said to the Prophet ﷺ, we looked at the previous surah in Nahl, ayah 44, we sent you the Quran so that you will clarify it. Yes? Yes? But did Allah leave the Prophet ﷺ to clarify it himself? To explain it himself? Yes or no? No. How we know that? Say it. Because this ayah, look at the ayah. Inna alayna bayana. Allah Ta'ala is saying it's our job to also teach you the meaning and bayan and the clarification. And then one other ayah even more, it reinforces this idea about the Prophet ﷺ doesn't just speak from his own desire.
If he did it, he would be destroyed.
No, that's taqawwal. That means different slightly.
وما ينطق
Beautiful.
عن الهوى
Yes. In huwa
وحي يوحى
illa wahyu yuha. وما ينطق عن الهوى. The Prophet ﷺ does not speak from his own desire, his own mind, his own what he thinks it means. In huwa illa wahyu yuha. It is nothing except the revelation that Allah reveals to him, that then he speaks. He will not speak without Allah Ta'ala's confirmation and his communication, say this and explain like this. And if the Prophet ﷺ is going to ever make a mistake as a human, Allah, he will clarify, rectify his mistake to make sure it is clearly understood. Happy? So you see, this is so beautiful that Allah Ta'ala, he has sent Quran and preserved it, and he sent Muhammad ﷺ and he guided him to clarify, explain all the Quran to us through his words, through his actions, etc. And before we end, there is some discussion in the Yasir Qadi book that how much of the Quran has been explained by the Prophet ﷺ himself. There's discussion there. So the two, when you look at the two opinions, they both corroborate each other, in fact, that there are few ayat, there are very few ayat that have been explicitly explained by the Prophet ﷺ. Like inna shirka la zulmun azim. Prophet ﷺ explained what does zulmun azim mean. What does zulm mean? It is shirk, yeah? Explicitly. But the whole Quran has been explained by the Prophet ﷺ through his whole life and his sunnah of implementing the Quran. And the Sahaba sitting and learning from him every ayah and its meaning and its application, and then seeing him, then going back and forth to ask. So it has been completely explained. And the ahadith, when you look at the Quran with the ahadith, you will find that how the ahadith have further clarified or elaborated or specified the Quran beautifully.
هو الذي أنزل عليك الكتاب منه آيات محكمات هن أم الكتاب وأخر متشابهات. Some clear, some.
Yes, it could be, yeah. For the mutashabihat, could be possibly, but arguably they would be muhkamat, because they would be muhkam because the Quran would either explain or the Prophet would have explained. So therefore they become muhkam. Depending on what you mean by mutashabih then. Because mutashabih, we said, meant two things or more that could mean the same, so you're not sure which one is the right. Allahu Alam. Next time, inshallah, we will go into discuss the problem of not accepting hadith and why people reject the hadith as a source and a means of tafsir of the Quran, and the dangers and the problems that causes and creates, and how it opens up all types of issues. We come to the end of today's session. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. صلى الله على نبينا محمد.